I've always built up Christmas to be this wonderful, magical time of year when everyone's happy and warm and cozy, and the lights are lovely, and the music's familiar, families are gathering, and presents are piling. And you know what? There are times when it really is all those things. But I've noticed in the last few years that sometimes I feel differently, and I'm trying to figure out why. The way we do Christmas can be so hectic with parties and shopping and travel plans and all that stuff that we pile on. And the weird thing is, even in all that activity, I can feel alone. Isn't it almost worse when you're surrounded by people and you feel alone? I think a lot of it has to do with where I'm at personally during the holidays. If I'm happy, everything is brighter and more joyful and cheery. But if I'm hurting, Christmas can be a real rough patch that just magnifies whatever's going on. And Christmas is such an annual marker for good things like baby's first Christmas or first Christmas in a new home. But it can also be stuff like first Christmas without a loved one or without a job. And we put all this pressure on Christmas that it should be this or it should be that. And it just really turns up the volume on your life, whether it's for good or bad. I go to school in the city, and a few weeks ago, I had to go out on the street for this project. So I got all bundled up, and I had this plastic shopping bag with some chalk pastels and tracing paper and like a disposable camera. And to tell you the truth, I was having some trouble focusing in school because I was in a really sad place in my life. I was brokenhearted and really in the worst grief that I've ever known. And on this day, I was bound and determined not to be distracted by what was going on in my life. Not an easy thing to do. I was down around Michigan Avenue sketching things and shooting pictures, and it's a really populated area. But at one point, I wandered across the street into Grant Park. And after a while, the sun set, and I realized I was getting really cold. And all of a sudden, I didn't feel comfortable being in the park by myself after dark. And I felt like what was going on around me intensified what I was already feeling. So right as I start to wonder what to do, this guy comes out of nowhere and he crosses my path and he's shouting and he's angry, and I don't know who he's talking to or what he's angry about. All I know is I want to be out of there. So I see this statue that was sort of lit up in the distance, and there were people around it. So I head that way, and as I get closer, I realize that the people were setting up to sleep there for the night. And had I been feeling better about myself and about my life, I probably wouldn't have been so afraid. I turned back toward the lights of Michigan Avenue, feeling incredibly sorry for myself. And the college bookstore was all lit up and looking inviting and warm. And I ran up and pulled the handle of the door, and it was locked. Now I'm really feeling bad about myself and my situation and my ridiculous class project, and I'm freezing. So I went down the block and there was a hotel, and I hustled into the lobby, and I see this lounge where people are seated around tables. So I make my way in and sit down at one of the tables, and as I do, I realize I don't have my wallet. I don't have any money. I have nothing but this plastic bag with some chalk and tracing paper. And I sit there at the table with my coat on, feeling like there is nowhere that I belong in the whole world, feeling completely invisible. Like nobody knows where I am, and worse, nobody cares. And it reminded me of a very memorable Christmas where I felt invisible and overlooked and completely forgotten. When I was little, I was crazy about horses. I had horse calendars and trinkets and books, and every few months I would ask, "Dad, can I get a horse?" My family started out in a townhouse with no garage and no yard, and we had 4 kids, and you can guess what the answer was, though I never stopped asking. So this Christmas, I'm 12 years old, and my family of 6 is opening presents around the Christmas tree. And I couldn't find any presents with my name. When my brother and sisters finished opening all their gifts, my heart sunk. I thought my mom and dad had forgotten me, and I felt completely invisible and hurt and angry, and I was so stunned, I didn't even protest. We all piled into the station wagon to head to Grandma's house, and I just sat in the back seat of the car in total silence. And at one point, my dad pulled over and he had to stop at some guy's house to talk about something, and I just sat in the back of the station wagon, fuming. And my mom was pointing out that there's a barn, and hey, maybe there's horses in there, Holly. And the next thing I knew, she was pulling me out of the back seat, and I saw this old, skinny horse with a ribbon around its neck. And as I pet him, I read the writing on the bow. Merry Christmas, Holly. And cameras were flashing, and my brother and sisters were clapping, and my mom and dad were just beaming. And you can go back and look at all the pictures. There is not one picture where I'm even smiling. I was in absolute shock. And the best part wasn't even my horse, named Pharaoh, who was like 30 years old and blind as a bat. I'm serious, it was a blind horse, and I didn't even care. He was a horse and I loved him, but that wasn't even the best part. The best part was that I wasn't invisible. I hadn't been forgotten. My parents saw me and they loved me, and they had planned the most precious thing in the world for me. So now, fast forward to me sitting in this hotel lobby, feeling alone and unseen again. And I was feeling so bad, I wanted to shrivel up or crawl in a hole. And I knew I had to order something or I had to leave, and I had no money and I was so cold. And the host of the lounge kept turning to look at me, and I just kept staring at my lap and digging in my pocket. And then the host walked up and he placed a cup of hot chocolate on my table, and I thought he had the wrong table. But before I could say a word, he said, "You look cold. There's no charge." And he walked away. And I had tears in my eyes as I tried to squeak out, "Thank you." I'm telling you, if an angel of God had appeared in that moment, I don't think it would have made any stronger of an impression. I felt God say, "I see you." And if there had been a camera, I probably had that same dumbfounded look on my face that I had at the age of 12 when I sat on my horse, Pharaoh. That guy will never know how much that meant to me. I heard God say, "I see you." And it didn't immediately cure me of all my grief, and it didn't wash over me and take away all the pain. But God said, "I see you, I love you, and I will show you my love in small, unexpected ways." And I think that's the message of Christmas. 2,000 years ago, God saw the suffering of his people. And the Bible tells us they were wondering, does God see us and love us? And they may have thought the answer to their suffering was a big, important gift from God. They were looking for a king to overthrow their oppressors and to bring peace and a great life for everyone. And God did see them and love them. And he showed his love in a small, unexpected gift, in a baby. And at Christmas, God can use the birth of Jesus to remind you and me, I see you, and I love you, and I will show my love in small, unexpected ways. There's a verse in Isaiah where God says, "Can a mother forget her nursing child? Even if that were possible, I will not forget you. See, I have written your name on my hand." God is telling us that every day I see you because every day I see my hand. And I have written your name on my hand. I see you. I love you. And I will show you my love in small, unexpected ways.